Hello and welcome to Message Joe. Subscribe to the channel by clicking on the bell to not miss new videos, and don't forget to like us because it's the best support for us. This story might be a little different from the usual ones you come across here. Sure, there's no shortage of tales about people getting cheated on, betrayed by someone they thought they could rely on. But my story? It's not just that. See, I wasn't just the guy who got wronged. By the end, I gave out my own share of payback. Now, before you go thinking I'm just another jerk, let me clear one thing up. I didn't get there on my own. I was pushed, dragged, practically thrown into doing what I did. It wasn't all on me. But hey, let's take a step back. We need to start at the beginning, right? A little background won't hurt before we dive into the craziness. To set the scene, I'm just your average guy. Not some brilliant mastermind, and definitely not the hero in some movie. Just a regular guy with a regular job, trying to stay afloat and keep some sense of balance in life. Drama? Not my thing. I'm steady, maybe even predictable. That's just how I've always been. My name doesn't really matter. But my wife, Rachel? Now, she's a whole different story. Rachel was the kind of woman people couldn't help but notice. She had this presence about her. She could walk into a room, and boom, every set of eyes would turn her way. It wasn't just that she was good-looking, though she definitely had her looks. It was more about the way she carried herself. Confident, sharp, always quick with a comeback. She had this magnetic energy that pulled people in. When we first met, I was blown away by how easily things seemed to come to her. People just wanted to be around her. And why wouldn't they? She was funny, charming, and had a laugh that could turn around even the crappiest day. And her sense of humor? Let me tell you, it was something else. She could roast you to ashes with just one comment, and you'd still end up laughing about it. It was like magic. Everyone loved her for that. Her friends, our family, even my buddies. And yeah, in the beginning, I was right there with them, soaking it all in. But over time, that humor, it started to wear me down. It's tough to keep laughing when you're always the punchline. You know, Rachel was the fun one in our relationship. Me, I was the one who made sure everything stayed on track, kept us grounded. And for a while, that worked. She brought the spark, and I kept the fire from turning into a full-blown disaster. But that sharp wit of hers, it ended up coming back to bite me hard. The cruelest joke imaginable was waiting for me, and I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't lived through it. Honestly, you won't believe it either until I tell you how it all went down. It was just a regular evening, nothing special. I came home from work, drained as usual. The daily grind was wearing me thin, but that's life, right? You work, you come home, eat, sleep, and do it all over again. But that night, something was different when I walked through the door. The house smelled amazing, warm, and comforting. Dinner was already on the table. Something Italian, I think. Rachel knew how much I love pasta, so she'd whip it up on nights when she was in a good mood. The candles were lit. Rachel was big on creating a vibe, and there she was sitting at the table smiling like everything was perfect. We sat down to eat, just like any other night. We talked, nothing out of the ordinary. I asked her how her day went. She asked me about mine. She laughed at something dumb I said. Her laugh, that laugh that could light up a room. At that moment, I thought everything was fine. I was too focused on shoveling food into my mouth, trying to shake off the stress of the day, to notice anything off. But as the conversation dragged on, I started to feel something shift. It wasn't obvious at first. Just the way she leaned back in her chair, her voice dropping a bit lower. I saw her narrow her eyes slightly, and then, out of nowhere, she hit me with it. You know, she said as casually as talking about the weather, I've been feeling a bit tired of us lately. I paused mid-bite, my fork hanging in the air. Tired? I echoed, unsure if I heard her right. What do you mean, tired? She sighed like it was the most natural thing in the world. I don't know. It's like things have gotten stale. Like we're stuck, you know? No, I didn't know. I was completely blindsided. We weren't fighting. We weren't in any deep rut. At least not from where I stood. Sure, we had our routines, but I thought we were good. We'd been married 7 years, and I figured we had it figured out by now. Turns out I was way off. Then she dropped the real bombshell on me. So, I slept with someone, she said, her tone as flat as if she were telling me she bought a new jacket or tried a different hairstyle. It made me feel better. But don't worry, I'm not going to do it again. For a second, my brain just froze. Everything went quiet. Her words were just hanging there, floating in the air, waiting to sink in. Did she really just say that? Did my wife just casually mention she cheated on me over dinner? Like it was nothing? My mouth went dry, and my hands tightened around my fork so hard I could feel the metal bending under the pressure. But honestly, I didn't care. I stared at her, waiting for any hint that this was just one of her twisted pranks. But there was nothing. No smirk, no glint in her eye. Just cold, detached indifference. And then, as if she hadn't just shattered my entire world, she stood up, walked over, and kissed me on the lips. It wasn't a real kiss. It was a quick, empty gesture, completely devoid of meaning. "Good night," she whispered, almost too softly, and then, without another word, she turned on her heel and headed toward the bedroom, leaving me frozen in place, utterly paralyzed. I couldn't move. Hell, I couldn't even think straight. I glanced down at my hands and realized I'd bent the fork in my grip. The damn thing nearly snapped in half. My chest tightened, and all I could feel was this overwhelming surge of anger bubbling up, threatening to consume me. But instead of storming after her, instead of demanding answers or throwing something, I stayed glued to my chair, fists clenched, with only one thought spinning through my head: revenge. She thought she could drop a bombshell like that, kiss me like nothing happened, and just waltz off to bed? Like I wasn't going to react? Oh, I'd react, all right. She was going to regret ever opening her mouth. But the crazy part? I had no idea it was all just a sick joke. How could I have known her twisted sense of humor would take it this far? When she kissed me and casually walked away, my rage hit like a freight train. I couldn't sit there and let it fester. My mind was spiraling, and I needed to get out of that house fast. Without thinking twice, I grabbed my jacket, threw it over my shoulders, and walked straight out the door. I needed space, air, anything to clear my head. But more than anything, I needed someone to talk to. My first instinct was to call my best friend, the guy I usually turned to when life went sideways. But as I scrolled through my contacts, my thumb hovered over a different name, one that gave me pause. My wife's friend. Let's call her Emily. Now, Emily wasn't just any friend of Rachel's. I'd known her long before I ever met Rachel. We used to hang out in the same circles before Rachel and I became a thing. And if I'm being real here, there had always been something between Emily and me. Nothing ever came of it, but I knew she had a thing for me back then. It was just one of those situations where the timing was never right. Still, I had a gut feeling her old feelings hadn't disappeared entirely. Without giving it much thought, I hit call. She picked up after a couple of rings, sounding a little surprised but not in a bad way. "Hey, what's up?" she asked, her tone casual, like we hadn't been out of touch for months. "Can you meet me?" I blurted out, the words rushing out before I could think. "At the bar near your place? I need to talk." There was a brief pause on the line, but she didn't question me. "Sure, I'll be there in 10. That was it. No grilling me about what was going on or why I needed to talk. She just agreed, like she knew something big had happened. I jumped in my car and drove to the bar, my mind still racing from everything that had just gone down. When I walked in, I saw her right away, already sitting in a booth with a drink in hand. Emily looked up as I approached, her eyebrows arching slightly in surprise. "Where's Rachel?" she asked. I sat down, avoiding her question at first. "She's not coming," I said flatly. That caught her attention. She leaned in closer, her expression shifting from casual to concerned. "What's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." We ordered a couple of drinks, and once the alcohol started kicking in, the words just spilled out of me. I told her everything. How Rachel casually admitted to cheating, how she acted like it was no big deal, and how she kissed me goodnight afterward like nothing had happened. At first, Emily didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes, the shock, the disbelief. But the more I talked, the more she realized I wasn't making it up. I saw it all start to click in her head. We kept drinking, the conversation getting heavier with each round. I could feel the alcohol taking the edge off my anger, but the rage was still simmering under the surface. By the time the bartender gave us the last call, we were both pretty drunk. That's when Emily leaned in closer and said, "I've got another bottle of wine back at my place if you want to keep this going." I didn't even need to think about it. I nodded, and we left the bar together. Her apartment wasn't far, just a short walk. We stumbled in, laughing about something I can't even remember now. But the moment that bottle of wine was open, I knew exactly where the night was heading. There was this intensity in her eyes, and I wasn't about to stop what was coming. I didn't want to. Things escalated quickly after a few glasses. One minute we were talking, and the next we were on her couch, hands everywhere, lips locked. In that moment, I made a decision I hadn't planned on. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Not the whole thing, just short clips here and there. Emily noticed, of course, and at first she wasn't having it. "What are you doing?" she slurred, her voice sharp despite the alcohol. She pushed my hand away from the phone. "It's just for me," I said quickly, trying to reassure her. "No one else will see it, I swear. It'll be fine." She hesitated at first, but eventually gave in. I guess years of unresolved tension, combined with alcohol and desire, have a way of breaking people down. So I let the camera roll a little longer, capturing just enough to satisfy whatever twisted part of me thought this was the right move. When it was finally over, I sat up and told her I had to leave. She gave me a look, clearly disappointed. "You're really leaving?" she asked, a hint of hurt creeping into her voice. "Yeah, I should go," I replied, already feeling the weight of what I'd just done pressing down on me. "It's late." I could tell she wanted me to stay. It was written all over her face. But there was no way I was sticking around. This wasn't going to turn into something regular, and I definitely wasn't about to complicate my life any further by spending the night in her bed. So I left. I called a taxi, and as I sat in the back seat, my head spinning from the booze and the sex, a strange mix of satisfaction and guilt washed over me. I had done it, gotten my revenge, but did I feel any better? Not really. If anything, I just felt empty, like the whole night had been a temporary distraction, something that filled a void for a moment, but wasn't going to change anything. When I got home, it was late. The house was dark, and Rachel was probably asleep in the bedroom, completely clueless about what had just gone down. I stood in the hallway for a while, my mind racing, trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. Eventually, without saying a word to anyone, I crashed on the couch for the night. The next morning, the tension in the air was thick. You know, that kind of suffocating silence that just screams something's off? Yeah, that was the vibe. I dragged myself into the kitchen, half expecting Rachel to act all normal, like nothing was wrong. But nope. She was sitting at the table, scrolling through her phone, eyes narrowed and her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't even glance at me when I walked in, just sipped her coffee, but I could feel the anger simmering under the surface. Not the explosive kind, but that slow, boiling rage that makes you nervous. I sat down across from her, pretending I didn't notice, but her gaze was burning a hole in the back of my head. We ate in silence for a few minutes before she finally spoke, her voice dripping with irritation. "So," she dragged the word out like she was savoring it. "Where the hell were you last night? You came home late, didn't even bother coming to bed." I could feel her watching me, waiting for an answer, but I wasn't in the mood for her interrogation. Still, I couldn't ignore her, and this time, I wasn't going to lie. She'd started this whole mess anyway. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "I was out," I said, keeping it short and vague. Needed some time to think. Her eyes narrowed even more as she put her phone down, giving me her full attention. "Think about what?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you were up to something." I smirked a little, letting her stew in her own paranoia. "Yeah, I was thinking about us, about how I'm getting tired of this marriage too." That caught her off guard. Her eyebrows shot up in confusion. "Wait, you're tired? Since when?" I shrugged, trying to act like it was no big deal, though we both knew it was. For a while, I guess. And last night, I let my words hang in the air, building the tension between us. I did something about it. Her face didn't change at first. She just stared at me, looking confused, like she thought I was messing with her. Then she leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms with a smug grin, like she thought she'd caught me in a lie. Oh, really? You did something about it? What did you do, huh? Cheat on me? I looked her dead in the eye and nodded. Yeah, I did. Her smirk stayed plastered on her face, but I could see her eyes searching mine, trying to figure out if I was serious. Oh, come on, she scoffed, letting out a short, nervous laugh. Is this your way of getting back at me for what I said last night? This is a joke, right? I didn't look away. I'm not joking, Rachel. I cheated on you. Her smile wavered, just for a second, before she quickly recovered. Sure you did. With who? The bartender? Some random girl at work? Oh. I took a deep breath, knowing exactly what I was about to unleash. No, not some random girl. It was Emily. That was it. Her smile vanished, replaced with complete disbelief. She stared at me, her mouth slightly open, like she couldn't wrap her head around what I'd just said. Wait, Emily? My Emily? Are you serious? I didn't flinch. Yeah, I slept with her last night. She blinked, then let out a forced laugh, more out of shock than anything. Oh my God, you're kidding, right? Emily, that's your big lie? What kind of joke is this? I didn't say a word. I just calmly reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and opened the video. I pressed play and held it up for her to see. She stared at the screen, still grinning like she thought this was some kind of prank. But once the video started and Emily's face appeared, that smile started to slip. Then the audio kicked in, our voices, the unmistakable sounds of what we had done, and her whole expression shifted. Her face went pale, her eyes widened in disbelief, and before I could say anything, she slapped the phone out of my hand. It flew across the table, clattering to the floor. You bastard, she shrieked, her voice cracking as she shot up from her chair so fast it almost tipped over. You goddamn idiot. You slept with Emily? Are you out of your fucking mind? I stood up, feeling my own anger flare. Oh, now I'm the bad guy? What about you? You cheated on me first. You don't get to act like the victim here. She glared at me, her eyes wild, her chest heaving with rage. I didn't cheat on you, you moron. It was a fucking joke. I froze. Her words echoed in my head, but it took a second for them to sink in. A joke? What the hell are you talking about? She threw her hands up, pacing around the kitchen like she was about to blow. I said it to mess with you. I wasn't serious. I didn't sleep with anyone. I was going to tell you after you cooled off, but you stormed out before I had the chance. The room started spinning, my mind trying to catch up with what she was saying. You were joking? All of this was just a joke. Yes, she screamed, her eyes brimming with tears. I was fucking joking. But you? You went and slept with Emily and filmed it? What the hell am I supposed to do with that? It felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. All the anger and self-justification I'd been holding on to crumbled in an instant. I just stood there, heart pounding, trying to grasp how badly I had messed this up. Rachel, I said, my voice barely a whisper as I reached for her. I didn't know. She cut me off, her voice raw and broken. I don't want to hear it. You've done enough. Tears streamed down her face now, and she looked shattered, more than I'd ever seen her. You ruined everything. You slept with my best friend. How the hell do I forgive that? I was speechless. There was nothing I could say to fix it. I didn't know. I repeated, but the words felt empty, worthless. Shaking her head, she backed away from me. Just go. I can't even look at you right now. And with that, she turned and stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door so hard it shook the walls. I heard the lock click, followed by the sound of her sobbing. I stood there in the kitchen, feeling like my world had just collapsed. I wanted to fix it, to apologize, but what could I possibly say? I had screwed up, badly, and there was no coming back from it. After Rachel locked herself in the bedroom, I knew waiting around wasn't going to magically fix things. The guilt was gnawing at me. I couldn't shake the image of her face, the shock, the hurt. But part of me was still angry too. Angry at her for even making that dumb joke, for pushing me to this point. So I grabbed my jacket and headed straight to Emily's place. I had to tell her everything. When she opened the door, her face lit up for a split second, until she saw my expression. I didn't waste time. I spilled everything, from Rachel's joke to the moment I showed her the video. As I talked, Emily's face shifted from confusion to outright fury. "You're such an asshole," she snapped, crossing her arms, her eyes cold and hard. "You set me up? You didn't tell me this was all part of some sick revenge plan." "What the hell are you talking about?" I shot back, my frustration boiling over. "You knew what we were doing. You agreed to it." "Yeah, I agreed because I thought it was just between us," she yelled, pacing around her living room, hands gesturing wildly. "I didn't know you were using me to get back at Rachel. Do you have any idea what you've done? I've lost my best friend because of you." I clenched my fists, trying to keep my cool. "It's not just my fault, Emily. You were there. You knew exactly what we were doing. You're just as guilty." She stopped in her tracks, glaring at me like she wanted to slap me. "You're unbelievable. You know that? I've loved you since college. And this is how you repay me? By screwing up my entire life." Her words hit me hard like a punch to the gut. I had no idea she still felt that way about me. Not after all these years. For a moment, the anger between us died down, replaced by this heavy, awkward silence. We both sat on her couch, staring at the floor, trying to make sense of the mess we'd created. After a while, Emily sighed and pulled out her phone. "I'm going to call Rachel. Maybe I can explain, maybe I can fix this somehow." She dialed Rachel's number, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried again and again, but still nothing. Rachel wasn't answering, and by this point, I had no clue if she ever would. The sinking feeling in my gut was growing, like I was trapped in quicksand, and no matter what I did, I couldn't claw my way out. After a while, I left Emily's place and headed home, hoping to patch things up with Rachel, to apologize, to somehow undo the damage. But the second I stepped through the door, she didn't even look at me. The first thing she said was, "I've already called a lawyer." Her voice was cold, detached. "I'm filing for divorce." It felt like the ground dropped out from under me. My stomach twisted into knots, and I was free falling with no way to stop. "Rachel, please," I started, but she cut me off before I could even get a full sentence out. "There's nothing more to talk about," she said, still not looking at me. Her back turned as she calmly folded laundry like we weren't in the middle of our marriage crumbling apart. "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." I stood there, frozen, trying to find the right words. But what could I say? I felt like complete garbage. I had lost her. There was no coming back from this. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I went back to Emily's. When I knocked on her door, Emily opened it, but I could see the hesitation in her eyes. "Can I stay here for a while?" I asked, feeling more desperate than I wanted to admit. She crossed her arms, scanning my face like she was weighing her options. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said at first, her voice full of frustration. I couldn't blame her. I dragged her into this mess, and now she had her own fallout to deal with. But just as I turned to leave, she called after me. "Wait," she said, her voice softer now. "Fine, you can stay, but only for a bit. This whole thing, it's a lot." And so, I stayed. The divorce dragged on for about a month, and during that time, Rachel made sure everyone knew exactly what had happened. She told every little detail to our entire social circle, and before long, people were picking sides. Most of them sided with her. No surprise there. I couldn't blame them. During that month, Emily and I spent more time together. What had started as a mistake born out of anger and bad decisions slowly turned into something else. We tried to date, to make sense of this new situation, but the harder we tried, the more it became clear that something wasn't right. There was this gap between us, this feeling like we were both too damaged to make anything work. Emily still had feelings for me. That much was obvious. But now, They were clouded by all the baggage, all the drama. And I felt it too. Every time I looked at her, the guilt would hit me all over again. Every smile felt forced, like she was trying to convince herself that this was okay. But deep down, we both knew it wasn't. I was stuck, trapped in this weird limbo between the ruins of my marriage and this new, fragile thing with Emily that didn't feel real. And as the days passed, it became clearer that no matter what we did, we couldn't escape the mess we had created. We were both out of place, and I had no clue how to move forward from there. Update. It's been a while since all of this went down, and I figure I owe you all an update. After the chaos with Rachel, the divorce, and everything that happened with Emily, I've had time to reflect on everything. I've grown up a lot, more than I ever thought I would. Emily and I tried to make it work for a while. We had history, sure, and for a brief moment, it felt like maybe we could turn something ugly into something meaningful. But the truth is, it just wasn't right. We had been each other's crutch during one of the most chaotic times in our lives, but that wasn't enough to build anything lasting. And you know what really killed it? Our so-called friends. The judgment from everyone around us was brutal. People love to talk, to act like they're somehow above it all. They whispered behind our backs, made snide comments, and treated us like we were some scandal for them to gossip about. It was exhausting. Eventually, it became too much. One night, after yet another awkward encounter with one of her friends, Emily and I sat down, and we both knew. We knew this wasn't going to work. Not with all the baggage, not with everyone's opinions looming over us like a dark cloud. So, we made the call to end it. It wasn't dramatic or full of fighting. We just let go, for both our sakes. Now, I'm in a different place, literally and figuratively. I've decided to move to another city, to start over. I'm packing up my things, getting ready to leave this town and all its memories behind. It's strange, but it feels right. Like I need to get away from the mess, from the constant reminders of what happened, and just begin again. I want a fresh start. No more judgmental looks, no more dragging the past around with me. It's terrifying, I won't lie, but there's something about starting over that gives me hope. Maybe this time, I'll figure out who I really am, without all the mistakes and regrets weighing me down. I'm not saying the road ahead will be smooth. It never is. But for the first time in a long while, I feel like I'm heading in the right direction, and I'm ready to embrace it. Here's to fresh starts. Update. So, here I am already settling into a new city. It's funny how quickly things can shift when you make the decision to leave the past where it belongs. I managed to land a job pretty quickly, too. It's nothing fancy, just some admin work with a bit of project management mixed in. Totally different from what I used to do, but after everything I've been through, the routine is kind of comforting. I show up, do my job, and head home. No drama, no stress, just the day-to-day grind. And for now, that feels like exactly what I need. But, of course, life being what it is, there's always something unexpected around the corner. There's this woman at work. Let's call her Sophie. She's the type who brightens up the room when she walks in, but not in a loud or showy way. She's got this quiet confidence about her, you know? The kind of person who doesn't need to say much to get her point across. Smart as hell, too, and not afraid to stand her ground. I find myself glancing her way more often than I probably should, and I'm pretty sure she's noticed. But I haven't said a word. How could I? I'm still dragging around all this baggage. Rachel, the divorce, the fallout with Emily. It's all still there, hanging over me like a cloud. And with that comes the guilt. The nagging feeling that I don't deserve to move on yet. It's like I need to make peace with the past before I can even think about starting something new. So here I am, stuck in this weird place. I really like Sophie, but I can't bring myself to take the first step. I keep thinking, what if I screw it all up again? What if I'm still too messed up to make this work? That's why I'm asking you all. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you take the leap? Or wait until you're sure you're ready, and the past is truly behind you? Anyway, I just wanted to check in and say thanks to all of you. Your support has meant more to me than I can express. I'm still figuring things out, but it helps to know there are people who've got my back. Here's hoping I can turn this mess into something good. Update. It's been a little while, and I thought it was time for another update. This one's a bit different. I'm in a relationship now with Sophie. It's going well, better than I ever expected. I took my time, didn't rush into anything. I wanted to be sure I was in the right place mentally and emotionally before jumping into something new. I've been working with a psychologist for a while now, really putting in the work to untangle all the mess of emotions and heartache left behind from Rachel and Emily. It's been tough, but worth it. The biggest thing I've realized is that I can't keep punishing myself for the past. Yeah, I made some bad choices. No doubt about that. But I'm starting to accept that I deserve another shot at happiness. And Sophie? She's been patient with me. She's kind, understanding, and just good. I told her about my past, and even though I was nervous as hell, she didn't judge me for it. That's rare, and I don't take it for granted. One thing that hasn't changed, though, I never did develop a sense of humor. Maybe it's just not in the cards for me, but I've come to terms with it. We laugh about it sometimes, especially since Sophie's got this lightness to her that I really admire. Maybe that balances things out. I just wanted to let you all know that things are finally looking up. I'm in a much better place now, and it feels good to be able to say that with confidence. Thanks again for sticking with me through everything. I wish you all the best in wherever life takes you, and I hope you find your own fresh start.